You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast. I'm John Stange, and it's great to have you with us this week, as always, because we're about to talk about building and growing and monetizing your online platform. We're going to talk about taking your passion and turning that into a platform so that you can earn a paycheck from the things that interest you. And we have a real fun guest this week because this is someone I have had the blessing and the privilege to know for several years, and she's just become a really, really good friend. We even put together a book together several years ago, and you can find that online if you do a little searching for my name and her name. But our guest this week on Platform Launchers, our guest expert is none other than the book baker, Jennifer Harshman. She is the author of Your Book Bakery, Making It Easy to Write a Book. She helps people with all sorts of publishing needs and book writing needs and editing needs. She also can be found, and I like saying this at the beginning of a podcast and YouTube video, not just at the end, but she can be found at harshmanservices.com. And Jennifer Harshman, the book baker, welcome to the Platform Launchers podcast.
Thanks for having me, John.
Well, it's my pleasure. So, Jennifer, fill in the blanks. What did I miss? What do people need to know about you?
Oh my goodness. I love helping people, and I homeschooled my kids for 10 years.
Right?
So we just wrapped that up recently.
Nice.
Pardon me. And I love being here.
Well, we're glad to have you. You have been you're kind of one of the originals here in the Platform Launchers group. I mean, you were with us right from the start, and I love that. And it's been just awesome watching all the different things that you've been doing in the book world, the publishing world, all of that. It's been very exciting. Let me ask just kind of a preliminary question before I get to some of the things that I have on my list that are kind of platform centered, but what got you so interested in books and publishing and everything else? And by the way, if you're on YouTube, a lot of those books that are behind Jennifer, she had a hand in helping to edit or publish or any of those things. But what got you so interested in just the literary world?
I started reading when I was 3 years old, and I just loved books. So I've read everything I could get my hands on. And when I was trying to find something that I could do to supplement our household income,
Mhm.
a friend approached me about editing some books for her employer, and I had not known that I could do that. I thought I had to work for a publishing house and have a degree in, English or editing, and I just didn't realize it was an option, and it was what I had been searching for so long.
I love it. And now for years, you've been doing that and doing it at a high level. There's a lot of names that you have worked with over the years that people would absolutely recognize. And it's been exciting to see some of the things that you do. And every now and then, and I had this happen to me while I was camping, every now and then I'll be reading something and then find your name in it, in some of the cover material or in the acknowledgments where they're saying, I just want to thank Jennifer Harshman for helping me put this book together or helping me edit this book. I was reading something by Nick Loper while I was camping, and I had no idea that you had helped him edit that book. And I was like, oh, well, how do you like this? Jennifer Harshman's name appears again. So that's very exciting. So Jennifer, here on Platform Launchers, anyone that's been listening to the podcast for any length of time, or anyone that watches us on YouTube, certainly knows that we're all about online platform development. So, bridge the gap here for us. How do you feel that writing a book, if somebody's listening to us right now and they want to develop their online platform, how can writing a book be a key ingredient in that or part of that process?
I love that question. It's so many different answers that can go in there. So it can help to establish their authority. And one of the things that I love to tell people is if you look at the word authority, the word author is contained in it. So
Mm,
becoming an author is one of the best ways to establish authority and credibility. And
mhm.
you can also begin sharing your thought leadership and helping to get your message out to so many other people. And one of the things that people don't usually think about is the process of writing a book helps to make their message clear to themselves.
Elaborate on that a little bit. I completely agree, but, as someone who works with a lot of people doing this, what are you seeing in that specific area?
I see people approach it with a general idea. Often someone will say, I know I need to write a book to attract the right clients, repel the wrong ones, help me to get my message out and grow my business. All of those things that a book can do.
Right.
But they aren't always very clear about what they want to say with their book.
Mm.
And so I know you talk about your list of D's
Mhm.
and defining the message. That's a really important first step. And when people will think through, what do I want to put into my book? Who is it that I'm serving? How am I serving? I'm going to take them from point A to point B. Well, what's point A? What's point B?
Mm.
And all of that process of sifting through these things, working through this, helps them to realize what their message is, and then they can share it.
I love that. Those that are watching us on YouTube right now and those that are listening via the podcast can't see that there's a chat. So we're recording this live in front of our membership community. And I just saw in the chat from Rich Avery, he said, yes, I agree with Jennifer that working on my book has helped me gain more clarity in my message. So testifying to what you just said, and I know that you and Rich work together. You also alluded, by the way, and I'll just mention these for those that aren't familiar with them. You mentioned the 5 Ds that we talk about here in platform launchers. And in our pre-conversation before we went live with the podcast here, we were talking about that. But if you're not familiar with these, we talk about discovering your message, delivering your content, developing your tribe, deploying your team, and deriving your income. Those are the 5 Ds we talk about here. And I completely agree that it does help sharpen that message when you take the time to write it down. And in one of my books, I took the time to really elaborate on some of those concepts and to force yourself to sit down and write these things out. It does help sharpen the message. So you see that with the clients that you're working with.
I do.
Excellent. It's kind of interesting. And I'm going to ask you a money question in a little bit, but I'm going to save the big money question I'm going to ask you. But one of the things that I have noticed, and I had this happen just the other day, and I'd love for you to speak to this as well. A lot of times people think that if they write a book, that that's a guaranteed ticket to making money. A lot of times people think that books in and of themselves are a money thing, and they can be, but usually I don't think that they are. Do you think so? In your opinion, if finances aren't the main thing that tend to come from a book, you've already mentioned authority. You've already mentioned clarity of your message. Is there anything else that you would say, you know what, this right here is another major benefit of actually writing a book?
You can make such a difference in the lives of your readers. And to me, that's the number one reason to write a book.
Hmm.
That's what we're here for.
Right. Life change.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
without a doubt. All right. Another question I have for you. You're working with a variety of people. You work with people here in platform launchers and people, all over the place, right? That connect with you and your platform. Can you share? So when you think about the people that you've helped, I'd love to hear some success stories. People that you got from point A to point B, people that thought maybe they could never write a book. They always wanted to do it and they just thought it was impossible for them. I wonder if you have any success stories of people that you've helped build an audience, build a business, develop their sense of authority. What does that look like? Can you tell us, just some examples, maybe?
Oh my goodness. Most of my clients are writing books for that purpose. So there are so many. um, my goodness. I have a couple here that I'll show you their books.
Okay,
So you can see Phil Mershon, Unforgettable.
nice.
um, Ken Hanneman, Ungraduated.
Okay,
And Susie Tomanchok. This title is a mouthful: The Art of Everyday Negotiation Without Manipulation.
okay,
So they all overcame imposter syndrome They all worked through all of the process of planning and writing and identifying their audience and the problems that they wanted to solve for them. And all of these people were people that I got to help through the entire process.
So what does the process look like? If somebody works with you and you're coaching them, and by the way, I don't know if you see in the chat, Brian May says, "Hey, I know those last two books. That's pretty cool." And Phil Whitebloom says, "Also fun, confidence building and self-satisfaction are all residual effects." So people echoing some of the things that you're talking about. But what does the process look like? Someone works with you and says, "I have the vision for a book. I'm not really sure where to start." You help them bake the book. They don't just write the book, they bake the book. So, how does the book baker work her magic?
So I start with audience and say, what is it that you want your book to accomplish? Because Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind.
Mhm,
If you don't know where you want to go, how will you know when you get there?
mhm.
So we start there and we work our way backward and plan out the whole outline, everything that needs to go in it, and all of those things, and then set up their writing schedule and start with different writing exercises. And like you can find all of this stuff in the book that I wrote about it.
Right? Your book bakery.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
So we just go through the whole process of writing it, and then all of the editing, different types of editing that need to be done, the layout, interior design, cover design, putting it all together, and then they're a published author.
Do you think more people I already know the answer to this. I guess we all do, but I'm gonna ask it anyway because someone probably needs to hear it. Do you think more people can write a book than really think they can write it?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, we
what
have
like what mindset then? What blocks people from actually pulling the trigger on this?
I think we have so many mental blocks around writing a book. We believe things that are not true. So I hear things like, well, I don't have the time to take a year off of work and go live in a cabin with a typewriter and no internet, and just so many things that they think that they have to drop all of their responsibilities and focus solely on the book.
Although that
And
sounds delightful, dropping all my responsibilities, living in a cabin with a typewriter. I'm down. Where do I sign up for that?
it does. And then also like thinking that it has to be super long.
Yeah,
Back in traditional publishing houses, the heft factor was a big deal. You
they
had
still
to
want
have
that. Traditional
the
publishing houses still want that. They want
Mhm.
a 250-page book minimum. And by the way, David Steen also says sign him up for the cabin. He wants that. And Colleen says, I finally got mine written after more than a year. Jennifer has been great. Also,
Oh,
everyone has a story, as Phyllis Jenkins says. Love
yes,
it.
absolutely. And you know what? Sometimes people will tell me, well, it's already been done. Someone has already written a book on this. And I say, good, because then that means that there's a need, there's a market for it. But you know what? They haven't written it in the exact way that you will. They
Mhm.
haven't used your stories, they haven't had your experiences, they haven't come at it in the way that you'll come at it.
Right. So there's that unique factor that and the we were talking about that here. If anyone was listening to the episode just I don't know, maybe I guess it'd just be a few weeks ago, we were talking about the fact that you have no competition, right? You have no competition. That's what I'm hearing as you say that because every person is unique. So you could be talking about the same subject that somebody else talks about, but because you have your unique gift set, your unique personality, your unique talents, or just the way you express it, there's certain people that will only hear you. They don't connect with certain personalities. They connect with yours. Is that how you
Mhm.
feel?
Yes, I do.
I like that. So I alluded to the fact that there was going to be another monetization question. And this is what I want to ask because it's like part B of the first question that I asked. But a lot of times people think they're going to write a book and it's going to sell really well and they're going to do great. The truth that most authors know is that the royalties that you make on an individual sale of a book are minuscule. There's it's not that's not why you should write the book. But a book can improve your financial picture in other ways, in a secondary way that's sometimes more lucrative than the book itself. And so I'm wondering, what do you recommend to authors who, someone who writes a book to experience some healthy monetization outside of book sales? So a sustainable income that can come from the book, but not necessarily just from the royalties.
So I know that you know this personally, that you have so many different revenue generating avenues that are available to authors these days. Some of them would be speaking engagements, workshops, courses, consulting, and other related business opportunities. So many doors will open up to someone once they have their name on a book.
Yeah, completely. You may have heard this said, and this is probably a timely example, but if anyone is who's listening is familiar with Dan Miller, someone that many of us were friends with, and he recently passed away and is with the Lord now, and we certainly miss him. But one of the things that he would often say about his writing, and he's got some very popular books, but I think his number, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, because I know that Dan was just featured in one of your books. So you just did something together with Dan not that long ago on leadership. But I believe I've heard him say multiple times that less than 1% of his overall revenue was from book royalties, but that his books led to the other 99% basically of the other things. It was a big authority generator and lead generator that encouraged people into his ecosystem, and many of the other things he was doing had a connection to that. Am I portraying that accurately as you remember it?
Indeed, you are. Yeah. And his book, 48 Days to the Work You Love, was really the foundation that rocketed him to his success. And he attributes that so many things that came out of it to the fact that he took the time to write that book. And that grew out of a Sunday school program that he taught. He created the lessons and people loved it so much and kept asking him for it in print form.
Mhm.
So he started off making a binder, printing it off, making copies, putting it in a binder, and giving that to his students. And then it eventually, turned into a book. And he had me edit his 2020 edition of that book.
Here it is right here.
There you
If anyone
go.
wants to see it, edited by Jennifer Harshman right here in my hand. Yeah, and led to a whole bunch of things, courses, memberships, all
Yes.
sorts of things. All right. Um, So let's confront some false beliefs now. You ready? I'm going to throw out a false belief, and you're going to confront it from the brain of the expert book baker. All right.
Okay.
False belief number one: writing a book is too difficult and too complicated for me.
Writing a book can be difficult and complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Um, it can be really small. I was showing some people in my group coaching program this evening a whole stack of books that are about a quarter-inch thick. They solve a very specific problem for the reader. And I know that some books can be written in as short as one day. And I think you wrote one in an afternoon. Is that correct?
One of my best-selling books I wrote in 4 hours, and it's sold every day since 2014. So 10 years now, and it's literally sold every day, and I wrote it in 4 hours. Totally true. All right. Okay. So you've debunked that one. All right. Here's another one then. I don't have the right education or the degree pedigree to be able to write a book.
You don't need those either. If you have a perspective to share, a message that you want to share, if you have experience related to the thing that you're writing about, or if you can do the research, interview people, pull from resources, and put it together, you can write a book.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Here's another objection that that I've heard some people say. I don't have the time. I don't have the time to write a book.
That one is my favorite. I have helped people write a book in literally 2 minutes per day. So if you can't squeeze out 2 minutes, then I think you really are stressing yourself out way too much and you need to look at your schedule, cut down a little bit. But it does not take nearly as much time as people think.
All right. Here's another one. Um, People don't really read anymore. I should just focus on video.
Some people read voraciously, and anyone who is looking for the problem that you're solving, if they're looking for the solution to the problem that you're solving, they will either buy your book, get the audiobook. They might even access it through an e-reader and have it read to them. So even if someone isn't reading with their eyeballs, they're still consuming that type of content.
So recently, I'd be curious if you have any opinions about this because this is a little bit on the new side of things, but there's all sorts of AI options that are coming on the market. And one of the AI options that I recently took advantage of was the fact that you can create an almost instantaneous audiobook with your written material now through Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing. So one of my books, I experimented with it. So the Podcaster's Playbook is now available in audio. And to make it available in audio, all I had to do was just select that as an option and select the voice that I wanted it to be in. So, what kind of world of possibility does that open up now for authors that at one point were creating just one version of their content and never really envisioned this becoming audiobooks or anything, but with the click of a button they could turn this into an audiobook. What do you see as kind of like the future of this or some of the possibilities that could come from this?
I think it's amazing, and I think about the just the cost savings. So, you know, back in the day, to hire someone to create an audiobook for you, it was about $400 per audio hour. That
Mhm.
was what you could expect to pay. And now with a couple of clicks, you're done? I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's funny. I shouldn't be rooting for that because I do voiceover work and have been paid to do audiobooks.
Mhm.
However, I have to admit it is kind of fascinating that you can create a useful product with it.
Yes.
So, all right, so it's time for us to land this plane. What final counsel would you like to give to someone that is really on the fence about writing their first book? In addition to just the fact that go for it, right? Because we would both agree on that. But any final counsel that you would give someone that really has been wrestling with this and as of yet has not made the leap.
Someone is waiting to hear what you're going to write in your book. That's something I was mentioning to my people tonight also, that you will make a difference. It's transformational for your reader, and you will change lives. And some of you who write books will save lives.
Mhm.
And some of the things we put out there will affect people for eternity.
Yeah. Isn't it cool to think, you're talking about affecting people for eternity. I also think about the fact that there are people, descendants that we have, let's say our great grandchildren, great great grandchildren, whomever it may be. If we write our thoughts down, we get these things penned down. It's like you have the opportunity to, you know, just share a little bit about yourself with relatives that you may not meet this side of heaven. But isn't it kind of neat to think that a book can be a way that you can share some thoughts with descendants that you didn't get to meet on this earth? I love
Yeah.
stuff like that. I notice, I don't know if you're seeing in the chat there, David Steen, he's the author of the book Almost Home, one of our members here, and he said, I had a new friend at church ask for my 210-page book on Sunday, and that person read the entire thing on Monday. So I guess people do still read, right?
Yes,
And
indeed.
David's going to be recording the audio book as well. So very exciting. So, Jennifer, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on here. And those that are members of our membership community, the Members Club, are now going to be peppering you with questions, but that's only for the members. So the Q&A is going to happen here in a minute. But as we say goodbye to our podcast listeners and our YouTube viewers, thank you so much for being part of this week's call. If you want to find out a little bit more about the book baker, Jennifer Harshman, I would encourage you to head over to her website, harshmanservices.com, or you can go over to amazon.com and you can find her book, Your Book Bakery, and definitely check out all that she has to offer. If you're interested in writing a book and getting something published after dreaming about it for decades, now's the time to do it. Jen, thanks so much for being part of our community and for being our guest expert this week.
Thank you, John. It's my pleasure.